was looking for chart. Okay, so we're going to do this chart here. Oh, not quite that big. That should do it. Let's see. Is it showing up? Yes. Okay. So the idea here is we need some volunteers to each take a column and just fill in the one column in hiragana. And then we're going to do a sort of side-by-side comparison of every hiragana with every katakana. Okay? So you want to come up. I've got plenty of markers here. So grab a column, any column. First come, first serve. Okay. Fill in what you can, you know.
Tips on one.
The easy one.
It's not easy, there's just not that many.
Yeah, I want to write it large.
We're doing hiragana to start with. Just, yeah, we're doing hiragana for now, and then we're gonna do a side-by-side comparison with the katakana. Yeah, I think the orange one is almost dead, so I'm just gonna get rid of the orange marker. Don't worry too much about the boxes, as long as you're in a fairly straight line. It's close enough.
Yeah, it's last on less than mine, right?
I can't I can only remember katakana. Oh no.
I've
I've been practicing katakana.
Yeah, that's normal. That happens. It's called language interference, and it's normal. Z top or S or Y top? Which do you like? Or sol? Do you like this one, or do you like that one?
Oh, now I remember. Okay.
See, that's all it took. A little finger writing.
Yeah, I do that whenever I take flash cards. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, it's this. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I do also. Yeah, that.
All I was remembering is because I was practicing so I was like, you know,
Yeah,
figure out
that's a good thing to be practicing.
And I
Yeah.
don't remember how to live it anymore. I don't remember.
So and shitsu give everybody hits when they first start katakana.
No, she and Sue, I got a down pack and the brother made me.
Ah, okay. So are basically the same thing with one less line. It's just they're, you know, the reverse. You would think that she and so might be the same because they're in the same column, but they're opposites. Is more like she, and so is more like Sue.
I figured that out, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have to remember she because that's how my name starts.
Ah,
So-
hi.
So I was like, okay.
Yeah, you gotta get that one. Yeah, otherwise you can't write your own name. Yeah.
That'd be embarrassing.
I always feel sorry for little kids who have really hard to write names. You know, like my son had a birthday party to go to last weekend, and the little boy's name is Sebastian. And so I had to help my son write Sebastian on the card. So I just spelled it for him though. He wrote all the letters. So I was proud of him. He managed it. He wrote happy birthday too.
It's like a little start.
Yeah, he's 4.5, so I was proud.
I should go.
Yeah. Well, he'll sell you 4 3/4, but it's very important to him.
It is until you get.
Yeah, until you get to double digits, and then it doesn't matter as much. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of go through. What I'm going to do is kind of do a line-by-line comparison for you guys of each one of these, and then we'll go through them faster after we've done sort of the overview. Okay, so is like that. Okay, no particular relationship between the hiragana and the katakana in this case, right? Okay, I, that one. Okay, and some of these, like this, for example, look a whole lot like a kanji component. This kanji component has the same person. And it's very useful. It shows up in dozens of kanji. So when you get to the point where you're learning kanji, and you can look at it and say, oh yeah, that's got a katakana "i" in it, it's so much easier to memorize new kanji that way. Most of the katakana look like something that occurs in a kanji some of the time. Okay, so, "u." Okay, what you want to make sure you're doing with "u" is the top line is a little vertical line. The second line is also vertical, or if anything, slightly tilted to the inside, and then straight horizontal, and then it goes kind of vertical to start with and then curves under a little bit. Okay, it's important. We're going to distinguish between that and some of the others that are similar looking. Okay, so a, I, u, e.
24 of them.
Yeah. Okay, so e, it kind of looks like one of those construction things, the I-beam. You know, have you seen in like big, you know, it says like the end-on view of an I-beam, or capital letter I, but it's e. It's not e. So you've got to be careful. And it looks a little bit like somebody got really blocky with your hiragana e, right? U also looks like you got really blocky with the hiragana u. So those two give you a little bit of help at least, right? Okay, and then we've got o. Okay, how many people have already started working on their katakana? Nearly everybody. Yay! Okay, so I'm going to go through these a little faster than I did this morning because we used up some of our time talking about study abroad stuff. So I'm going to go through these kind of quick. Ka, basically blocky version of hiragana ka without the extra line, right? Ki, again, blocky version of ki without the extra swoop, right? Ku, very important to contrast ku and u. They are not lookalikes, okay? Ku, both of the parallel lines have the same curve and angle to them. They're both like 45-degree angle, basically. The top line is shorter, and it doesn't have to be perfectly horizontal. Sometimes people write it more horizontal than I just did, like that. But it doesn't have to be horizontal. It can be on a little bit of a slant. But, ooh, this one's horizontal. These two are more vertical before the curve. And these two are curved and parallel to one another. So, and this is broader across the top. This is shorter across the top. Does that make sense? So that's an important distinction to help you have legible handwriting between u and ku. Okay? Ke, again, very important. It's similar to ku in general shape, but that line is supposed to stick out, and this second line is also supposed to stick out. Whereas in ku, you can have the two lines meeting, or you can have this first line sticking out just slightly, but it should not stick up as much as ke does. Okay? Some of the fonts exaggerate it on the ku, but handwritten form, you shouldn't exaggerate it. Okay? And also, ke counts as 3 strokes, whereas ku actually counts as 2. It's the short line and then a bent line is what that's called. Okay? Ko is another bent line, and then the bottom piece. And it also looks like you took the hook on ko and just took it straight down instead of across. But then the bottom line goes in the same direction as the bottom line of the hiragana ko. Okay? I'm going to change colors so that we've got a good contrast here. So, sa, if I were writing hiragana sa, I would put that more that way. But katakana sa, like that. Note that it's not really a mirror image of se because se has a much stronger bent line, whereas katakana sa has more of a curve to it. See that? And these usually are a little bit more even than it came out when I just drew it then. Okay, so that's sa. Shi, don't worry, we're going to come back to shi. Okay? Su. Su is a bent line, and then this little diagonal. Make sure this one does not cut through. The short line should not cut through. It would look too much like nu if you did. Okay, Su. Se actually looks more like hiragana se, just instead of the other line, it's got a strong hook instead. This one it really is a strong hook on katakana se. Some of the hooks are so small that you can do without them and it doesn't matter, but this one, it needs its hook. Okay, and then so, and again, we're going to come back to so don't panic. Okay. Okay, ta. You start out by writing a ku, basically, and then you add one extra line through the middle. Again, it should not stick out on either end. It should be contained within. Hi.
For that one, should it connect the first stroke with the first stroke? Or?
Some people write their ta not completely connecting. That's okay. Generally, with stroke order rules, if it's supposed to cut through, it needs to cut through for sure. And it needs to be clearly cutting through. If it's supposed to meet, meeting or almost meeting are considered equivalent in handwriting. So if it's supposed to meet but you've got a small gap, that's fine. Big gap, not fine. Small gap, fine. Okay? So anytime you've got two lines that are supposed to meet like they did in ta here, if there's a small gap on either end, that's okay. Most people, when they write ta, if there's a gap, it's only on one end or the other, not both. And again, you don't want it to cut through because it's going to look like something else. Okay, so ta, chi. The most important thing about chi is, first of all, this first stroke is from right to left at a 45-degree angle. The second stroke is horizontal or nearly so. The third stroke has a definite curve to it. It's important to get the curve on this one. I'm actually going to turn off the projector for now because I think it'll actually be easier. Oh, and okay, does that help clarify a little bit? Okay, so chi, you want to make sure that downstroke has a curve to it, because if you do the chi with a straight downstroke, that actually looks like the kanji for 1,000. Okay? And it's also in context with another kanji as a compound, it can be pronounced chi. So it would be very confusing. Yeah. Any Spirited Away fans? When Chihiro gets her name stolen, what's left is the kanji sen. That's another pronunciation. It can be read as chi, it can be read as sen. It means 1,000 when it's a standalone. Chihiro is a common girl's name. So and that kanji looks like that. So you can see the problem. If you curve it, it's katakana chi. If you forget to curve it, you've just written the kanji by mistake. Okay, so ta, chi, tsu. Here we go. Te, to. Okay, so te, it's like you're writing 1, 2, two little parallel lines. The top one is a little smaller, the bottom one's a little longer. Then from the center of that bottom line, you have a curved downstroke. Notice which direction it curves. Same direction as chi, but chi has diagonal and then horizontal, and the downstroke cuts through, right? Te, it does not cut through, and the two top lines are parallel to one another. There's an important distinction there. To, horizontal, vertical on the a short one on the diagonal. See that? Going back to tsu, we're going to talk a little bit about tsu versus shi. The first pair that gives most people the worst time, right? So shi versus tsu. Okay, how do you tell the difference? One way is when you're handwriting sheet, usually you come up from below with a nice big check shape. Not everybody makes it that obvious, but most people, it's fairly obvious that that's a check mark shape, okay? As opposed to tsu, which comes down from the top on all three lines. So if you're going to give it arrows, 1, 2, 3, that's how you write shi. Versus tsu is 1, 2, 3, down, down, down. Okay, not down, down, up. Okay, another key difference, look at how broad across the top that one is versus how narrow between the short lines and the long line that one is. You see the difference? Also, if you take him in order, in terms of stroke order, 1, 2, 3, this one is going counterclockwise, and you can outline it with the hiragana shi. See that? This one is going clockwise, 1, 2, 3, and you can outline it with a hiragana tsu. So that's a shi, that's a tsu. Make sense? And in tsu, especially, the opening of the tsu is also where the widest blank space is in the katakana tsu, right? The opening of the hiragana shi is also in the same direction as the widest part open on the katakana shi. Does that help distinguish between the two for everybody?
Yes.
Make it clear? Okay. The same rules hold for so, which is over here, and which is over here. So is like shi with one short line instead of two. Okay? And so is like tsu, but with one short line instead of two. And then the other one that is close enough to be a problem is ri, but it looks like hiragana ri just without the hook. Okay, so, and you've got narrow, medium, wide. Okay? And also this is vertical. This is a little bit of an angle. This is a stronger angle, almost horizontal, but not really, on the short strokes of each. So, do you see the progression? So this one is ri, this one is so, and it also looks kind of like the top of so if you write it the Y shape instead of the Z shape. So that's another way to help yourself remember which one is so, if you like that so. And then this downstroke kind of parallels this downstroke. Okay, except that this is actually an upstroke, so that's not that much help. But the shape is similar. Kind of like you just took this and turned it around. Okay, so does that help a little bit with some of the lookalikes that are most troublesome? Yeah. Okay, so we've got as far as Hachitsuto. Okay, so now I'm going to switch back to blue. So na basically looks like the first part of hiragana na, doesn't it? It's like they just took the first piece. Okay, ni, they took the second and third lines and straightened them out, right? Also, anybody who's familiar with kanji, this is the kanji for the letter, or the number 2, which is also pronounced ni. So, they're really identical. Katakana ni and kanji number 2, ni, look alike. Okay? Nu, remember when I said be careful of su? Nu. Okay? Some people draw their nu with the second line a little bit shorter, but either way you want to make sure that it cuts through very definitively, and su does not. Su, nu. See the difference? Okay, so that's nu. Ne. This one is another one that is very common as a kanji component. It's not a standalone. You can write it with a slight gap there. You can write it all connecting there. You can write it with a slight gap on the downstroke too. Okay? And again, with the kanji, it's very similar, but this is never a standalone kanji. It's only a component kanji. So you will not ever need to worry about being confused. Is this nen or is this a kanji? Because if it's part of something larger, it's definitely kanji. If it's all by itself, taking up the whole space for a letter, then it's katakana nen. Okay? No basically looks like you started writing the hiragana no and got lazy and quit. Okay? Ha looks like a little volcano. If you know your numbers, it looks like hachi. Some people think it looks like the villain's mustache and he's saying ha ha ha.
Wait,
Right?
huh? And then what's the okay, so Hawaii.
Okay, Hawaii, there's another way to think of it. And it's the first letter in Hawaii. When you spell Hawaii in katakana, it's ha, wa, I, like that. Okay? So, yeah, we'll get to wa in a sec. So, ha, he, looks to some people like a stick figure of a little guy driving a car. So, he is driving, some people use that mnemonic. I don't really see a whole lot else in that one, but you do want to be careful that he does not cut through so that it doesn't look like 7, nana, in kanji, and it doesn't look like katakana set with the hook missing, right? So again, he, and this is usually at a little bit of an angle, not straight horizontal. Okay, so that's he. Hu, depending on how you like to write your hiragana hu, katakana hu kind of looks like the top piece. Right? That first piece can have that kind of a shape. See it? So this particular person doesn't write it that way, but some people do. So that's hu. Also, if you compare it, it's a lot like u, missing 2 parts. Okay? And there are a few others that it's going to look like in a minute. So ha, hi, hu, he. Easiest katakana there is, because it looks exactly the same as the hiragana one. Identical. Ho. You actually have to look at the other letters in this word to be sure whether you're trying to read hiragana or katakana with he. Ho. Be careful, this one, the 2 diagonals need to have gaps. They should not connect, because this, where they connect in the center, is actually a kanji that means tree. And it's never pronounced ho. There's no incarnation of this kanji that I can think of where it's actually pronounced ho. So you don't want them to look alike, ever. So ho has little gaps. Okay? Please make them small gaps though, because this does not look like ho. That looks like the number 10 in kanji with a couple of random lines that are probably mistakes. So you got to make sure when any of these characters that you're writing, depending on what your handwriting size is, whatever size one character is, all the others should take up about the same amount of space. Think writing in box paper. Has anybody downloaded the box paper? I don't know if it made it from Angel to Canvas. If it didn't, I need to go find it again and repost it. But box paper is basically equal-sized boxes, and it's the equivalent of lined notebook paper for Japanese kids. And Japanese students in Japan, depending on how old they are and how small they like to write, they will have sheets of paper that can hold anywhere from only 100 boxes to 500 boxes to 1,000 boxes. And they use their nice little mechanical pencils so they can write nice fine lines, and it's 1 kanji or kana per box all the time. You never squeeze 2 kanji into the same box just because they happen to be easy to write and don't take a lot of strokes, and you never let a big complicated kanji with 22 strokes bleed out of its box. Okay? They're all taking up the same amount of space as each other, even if a lot of that space is white space. Okay, so ha yu ho. Ma kind of looks like got cocky and grew a really big head. You see it? So the way I distinguish those is ma, big head, little tail. Smaller head, bigger tail. See that? It's the same two pieces, sort of, but ma, the little line is on a distinct diagonal this way, and the is a downward curve. So that part's a little different, but the top is really a similar shape, just bigger or smaller. Okay, ma, mi, 3 strokes left to right at a downward angle. If you're being really picky, the sizes of them should be medium, small, large. The bottom one, whenever you have a grouping of 2 parallel lines, the top one is generally shorter than the bottom one. And whenever you have a grouping of 3, it's generally medium, small, large from top to bottom. That's true for the number 3 also, which is the same kind of thing but horizontal instead of diagonal. And mitsu is a word for 3 in Japanese, and this is mi. So that helps if you can remember that mitsu is 3. If you're having a hard time remembering that mitsu is 3, think about the car logo, Mitsubishi. It's 3 diamond shapes, right? So mitsu means 3. Okay, so ma, mi, mu. Mu looks like you took the ma and flipped it around, right? Like upside down and backwards, basically. The way to distinguish between ma and mu is ma looks like right? Mu looks like a U. And some people also see it in the angle of the bottom part of mu in hiragana. Right.
I think it looks like a nose.
Oh, okay, yeah, pointing that way, yes.
That's how I remember it.
Okay, yep. And does anybody know the cartoon faces that are done with kana sometimes? Have you seen, for example, let me think. Eyes, nose, mouth, he's screaming because you just punched him in the eye twice. You know, there are all kinds of silly ones of that. But you can make all kinds of funny faces with just hiragana and katakana, put them together in weird combinations. But that brings me also to met, which, remember we talked about met means eye in Japanese, and an X like that is also sort of comic book standard for a black eye, right? And that's how you write met. Now, it does have a longer tail on the second stroke. It's left to right and then right to left. And you don't want to let it drift too far because na is horizontal, vertical, but curves toward the end, right? Met is diagonal, diagonal. So you want to make sure that your na and your met don't look too much alike. You know, so that's an angle issue more than anything. Okay, mo, we've got, oh, I was doing blue before. Okay, mo, you do 1, 2, kind of like ni to start with, and then that bent line. Okay, and notice the contrast in stroke order because hiragana mo, you actually write the part that looks like shi first, and then the 2 cross pieces, top then bottom. But katakana mo, you actually write 1, 2 first, and then the bent line third. Okay. Ya yu yo. Ya. Sorry, that's too curvy. It's hiragana ya. Ya. Big hook and an extra stroke. Be careful that this hook is fairly tight. It's narrow as opposed to that, which looks an awful lot like a messy ka, right? So we don't want it to look like that. We want ya to look like this and ka to look like that. The bottom of this one should be even. The two downstrokes should be even with each other. Ya should have a very distinct angle to it. Right?
Should the first stroke be horizontal or angled up?
The first stroke on ya is usually angled.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be as steep as I made it, but it's usually an angle. Yeah, you don't want it to be horizontal because then it starts looking like a messy ka. Okay, ya. You, most people think that one looks like you're starting a game of hangman. Okay, yo looks like you just showed up for your eye exam. Right? Your backwards E on the eye exam. Okay, ra actually kind of looks like a squashed angular version of hiragana ra. Most people write this stroke of the ra a little bit bigger. Makes it a little easier to see the relationship between the two. Also, ra looks like fu with an extra line above it, right? So if you're grouping them by lookalikes that you're afraid you're going to confuse, there's one for that category. Okay, ri we talked about basically looks like hiragana ri without the little hook. Ru, I don't have a good mnemonic for this one. Maybe roof, but you know, maybe it looks like a chimney on the roof. I don't know. Ru, okay. Re kind of looks like the second half of ru. It also kind of looks like the last part of hiragana ru. Oh, re, rather. Re, re. See that?
I always think it looks like a reaper's sight or something.
Okay, yeah, okay. Grim Reaper. Okay, and then ro looks like a little box, but stroke order matters. Let me show you how the stroke order works on ro, because this is another one that's actually identical to a kanji that is very commonly used. As kanji, it means mouth or opening, and it's used in dozens and dozens of kanji. And it's always written with this stroke order. Down, bent line, bottom. Okay, and when it occurs within kanji, it occurs in two different sizes. The small size is sometimes by itself, or sometimes with a line through it, like middle. That's middle. When it occurs large, it generally has something inside of it, in which case the big box means something like enclosure. And like I said, both versions of that occur dozens of times throughout Japanese. Very common characters. That's country, by the way, in case you were wondering. So, you know, lots and lots and lots of kanji have katakana ro in them, only they don't call it that when it's part of kanji. They usually call it kuchi, which means mouth, and it's in all, you know, exit and entrance and, you know, emergency exit and words having to do with speech and communication and lots of others. Okay, so that's ro. Wa, add one extra line to your fu, you've got wa. And notice that it is a strongly vertical line, not to be confused with ku, right? And then o is rarely used, but it also looks like you took a katakana fu and added one line, this time to the inside. Some people actually write it by writing the two parallel lines and then that. Some people write it as a bent line and then that. I don't remember which stroke order your textbook shows, but both of those are the two lines. Okay, I think both of those are considered standard possibilities for writing o. The truth is, it's rarely ever used because it's the particle o, and we don't normally do particles in katakana in modern Japanese. Okay, and then our final one we talked about before. Right? Any questions about the katakana?
I know with hiragana and ri, like I see certain
Uh-huh.
fonts and stuff, they have like the two connected.
Right. Katakana, you don't do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. Hey,
Is the ta, the not
crossing through the second stroke absolute? Because I guess
Some
Font-
fonts
yeah.
cut through a little bit.
the font for my stroke order chart is weird, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, there are some fonts on the top that do like that, but it's only cutting through that tiny little bit, which kind of counts as not cutting through. Okay? Right.
With co, the second stroke I've seen a lot of times going through
Downward or across?
across.
Across. Again, you want to be careful. It can go across a little bit, but if it goes across too much, it looks like you. So you want to be careful on that one. Handwritten styles differ from print fonts sometimes, and that's one of the places where handwriting dictates usually that it not cut through so that it's easy to tell that you mean co here and you here.
Should the bottom line, or the last stroke on co, or second stroke, start further to the left?
It should be approximately equal with the other one.
Okay.
Whereas you, the bottom line is distinctly longer than the
Okay.
top. Yeah. It's hard to be precise when you're handwriting stuff, so the top and bottom parts of co aren't necessarily identical in length, but they're usually fairly close.
And with
Right.
rote, is there any danger to writing it basically a box with?
Well, I don't want you to just do like that,
Yeah.
which would be the American style box, but if you're writing it in the right stroke order, it's just kind of a natural tendency that it ends up slightly trapezoidal.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and that's, again, the norm in handwritten form.
Okay.
Some fonts make it much boxier.
Yeah, I was looking at the Genki website.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, the fonts sometimes make it a lot boxier, both as kanji and as katakana, but in handwritten form, it almost always ends up a little bit trapezoidal. Right?
Or should the two strokes connect, or should it be a little?
It can be either a small gap or a connection. Yeah, yeah, I think I wrote it both ways. Yeah, again, it can connect like that. A small gap is okay. Cutting through very slightly is okay, but you don't want it to cut through too much. Okay?
Connecting to the top one.
This connecting all the way to the top? No.
Okay.
Yeah. It's never going to connect all the way to the top. Some people write it where it gets a little bit closer like that, but that's too sloppy. That's starting to look like a kanji that you didn't finish. Because that looks an awful lot like that
It looks
kanji.
like, it's not touching the top, it looks pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be fairly close, but you don't want it touching. Yeah, and again, like I said, print fonts are different from handwriting fonts, because if you're in the habit of letting this get too long, it's easy to start making it touch over time as your handwriting progresses with time, and you don't want it to touch. So it's better to err on the side of a little bit lower down so that you don't end up with it eventually touching. You see what I'm saying? Because everybody's handwriting changes with time and practice. But one of the keys to having good handwriting in Japanese is don't rush it. Right now, while it's still new, take your time, write it fairly carefully. It might take longer to write it fewer times, but the speed will come of its own accord when you know them really well. If you're rushing it now, while you still don't have it solidly in your muscle memory, that's when bad habits can really creep in and you start writing it incorrectly or wrongly, and then it becomes a hard habit to break once it becomes muscle memory. So, try not to exaggerate the motions and try not to exaggerate the connections or disconnections too much. So that'll help. So are we ready to look at them in the font I've got, which might be different from the font you've been looking at? So this one is
E.
Hi. Okay, should we scramble them and review a little bit? it. Let's see how far we get. Okay, so this one is
E, U, O, A.
All right. Any questions about IUAL? Okay. Let's try next batch. Okay, this is Pa,
Ki,
Ku,
Ke, Ko,
and
Ga.
Ka. Yep. Come on. So the diacritical marks work exactly the same way.
E,
Ku,
Ku,
Ke, and
Go.
Right. So you can make all the same sounds with katakana that you made with hiragana, right? And more, yes. We'll talk about special crazy combos later. Right? Sa,
Shi, Su,
Su,
Se, So,
right? And
Za,
Ji,
Zu, Ze, Zo.
and I realized we forgot to scramble these and practice some more, so let's try that. Okay, let's try. So this is
Ka, Ki, Ku, Ke, Ko, Ga.
Oh, they didn't get scrambled very good, did they? Oh well. We'll try again in a second.
Ga, Ki, Ku, Ke, Go.
I thought I'd shuffled them, didn't I?
You were shuffling them around, but
Yeah, they just
So
didn't
good.
shuffle.
Amazing.
Shuffle them backwards. Right away.
I'm just way too good at this, huh? Okay, let's try again.
Ki,
Ku, Ke,
Ke,
Ko,
E, U,
U,
O,
A,
Ga, Gi, Ka, Gu.
No.
Yeah, go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ke,
Go.
Okay, one more time with them a little bit more
Ku
shuffled.
is just like straight down.
Eh,
Ki,
E, O, Ga, Ka, Ge, Ke, Ku, Ko, U, A, Gi, Gu, Ko.
Okay, that's a little better, right? I'm gonna leave a couple of piles going for the next batch. We'll scramble these in two. Let's see if I do this, maybe that'll help a little bit. Okay, maybe that's a little scrambled.
Zu,
Sa. Oh, and I.
Se, Sa, So, Za.
They're sticking to each other.
Ji,
Right?
Shi, Su, Se, Zo.
Okay. One more time, even more shuffle. I'm pretty sure. So,
E, Ga, Ge, Ku, U, Gi, Ko, Se, Sa, Ji, Se, E, Ki, O, Ka, Ke, Ko, A, Ga, Gu,
goo. There you go.
Zu,
Goo.
So, Za, Shi, Su, So.
Okay, getting there. Okay, ready for a few more? those for a second. Okay. Okay, let's try these a little bit shuffled. Sue, yeah, Sue. It's down, down, down. Okay, I know it's confusing that these start skinny and get fatter, and this one starts fat and gets skinnier, but that's calligraphy styling. That's dependent on, are you starting with a very light tip, barely touching the paper, and then adding pressure, like this one? Or are you starting very strong and then letting up the pressure as you draw, which is that one? Okay, and you can do either one of those styles depending on how you want to write the line. And some of this is sort of stylistic choice, some of it is sort of known or standardized. So, but at any rate, that is Sue.
Told.
G.
G, yes.
De.
Yeah. Which one is it? She, yes, that's she versus, see the difference? Okay, that's she. Te, there's te. Da.
D.
Zoo, so that's zoo. Think Brevard Zoo. And dole. Okay, you ready to get a little crazy now? Let's see if we know all of those. Okay, so that's
Ga.
Ku, Gi,
Ze.
G,
E.
Ka,
Ko. Gu. So.
Alright.
she.
Oh, sorry, can you not see?
I can't see from right here.
Okay, let me see if I can move myself over to the middle and see if everybody can see from here. Does that work better? Can everybody see it? Okay. That is she, yes.
So.
Alright.
Su.
Ja,
Ja.
G, yeah.
Te.
Zoo.
E,
Get.
U. Go. Sa. Se. Ki. O. Ke. A. Zu. Za.
Sticking again.
Su,
Da.
Alright.
To. De.
She.
Da.
Do.
Do.
There we go. Okay, ready for a few more? Let's see how many we can. Getting confused?
Yeah, run back with these.
Okay, but you've got some idea of
Oh, yeah.
what to do next, right? Okay, so this one is
Na.
na,
Ni,
ni, nu,
Me. No.
yeah, and the font changes because the one that was this style shortened that second line so much that I thought it was confusing because some people would want to write it that short and it's not really clear which character you mean when you write that second line too short. So we'll hear them once more by themselves.
Ni.
Ne.
Ne. No.
No.
Na. Nu.
Okay, now scramble them. So our first one here is
Ga.
Gi,
E.
Gu.
Gu.
So, yes.
Te.
Te.
All right.
Ge. Sa. O. Zu.
Yep.
E,
Right.
go,
Right.
ki,
Su.
su,
Right.
de,
De.
All right.
Da.
Da.
Dar.
Yeah. No. And
Nu.
nu. Okay.
Probably.
What's that?
I feel like I'm picking this up way faster than
Yeah.
Hiragana.
If you catch it while you're still you've just finished learning hiragana, but you're good at hiragana, you're not rusty with it, and you're not still struggling with it. That's like the perfect window of opportunity to get hiragana easily, because you can see the relationships between the ones that look alike. You're not too overwhelmed to learn the ones that are not alike, and you haven't reached a level of language fossilization where you feel like, what do I need katakana for? I know hiragana, that's good enough. Which, if anybody's ever known somebody who's an immigrant who's been living here like 20 years and their English is still horrible, that's called language fossilization. What happens is they get to a place where they can survive, they can function and do what they need to do, and they've got enough people around them helping them and enabling them, and they've got enough function that they just feel like, that's enough, I've learned all I need. And it becomes very difficult. It's like a really strong mental block. It becomes really hard for that person to continue improving the language once they stop at a point where they feel satisfied they've got enough. So as language learners for Japanese, you want to try to avoid getting to a place where you sort of quit because you feel like, okay, that's good enough, I don't need to learn anymore, I can function in Japan now. If you keep learning, you'll keep learning. But if you let yourself get to a point where you're just sort of complacent, after a while, it becomes hard to pick it back up again. You get out of the habit of studying it, and you don't want to work that hard anymore. So, and for some people, just mastering hiragana, they get to that point with writing systems. They don't want to learn katakana, they don't want to learn kanji, because they figure, what's the point? I got hiragana, that's good enough. I can read kindergartner books. I can get by in Tokyo subways where they write it out phonetically like every other post or so.
de,
Right?
De.
ta,
De.
zu,
Zu.
Right?
Se.
chi,
Ku.
shi, i,
I.
de,
De.
e,
Ku.
o, zu, ze,
Right?
u,
Za.
ni, ju,
Okay.
go,
Go.
That was, yeah, this one is G. You can tell by the broad angle across the top. It's G versus Z.
go,
Go.
Right?
da,
U.
ga,
Ga. Zo. Sa.
do, ka,
So.
su, ken,
K.
Ken.
Yeah.
to,
To. Na.
ko,
G.
ji,
Yeah.
ki, su,
And
No.
All right. Okay. Let's add a few more. Okay, and since you guys know the concept of the diacritical marks, I'm including those. Okay. Okay, so we have
ha,
he,
u, e, o, ba, mi, u, e, o,
Ha.
He.
He. Ha. He. Ba. Be.
P.
O.
Who?
He.
O.
B. O.
O.
And
Who.
okay, now, these ones. Okay, so this one is.
So.
So. Good.
K.
All right.
G.
Su. Ge. Zoo.
Zoo.
Zoo, yes, zoo. It's narrower here. The G was so wide that these guys fit inside. Remember that?
Goo.
Chi.
Be.
Zoo.
Ni.
Ni.
G.
Ka. To.
To.
Na.
Na.
It's really hard to get apart sometimes.
No. Boo.
Boo. Okay. Which is not the sound a ghost makes in Japanese. Boo boo
Ha.
is like, no, you're wrong.
Ha.
Be.
Yeah.
Roo.
Which is a laugh. Hoo, hoo, hoo. You see some of these in onomatopoeia in manga. Anybody read manga? Now that you're learning katakana, look at the illustrations, even the manga that are in English. Very often the onomatopoeia is in katakana embedded in the illustration, so they leave it intact. It's not necessarily within the speech bubbles.
B.
Te.
Ne.
Chi.
Ha.
Goo.
Se.
Boo. Da.
Da.
Nu.
Ga.
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 Sa. Zoo.
Yep, Sue, I know, that's very similar looking. Remember, she is gonna come up from the bottom.
He.
Het falling down.
Ba.
O.
Right.
He.
Come on,
O.
O. O. Ki. Gi. Da.
Se.
I.
De.
De.
O. Za. Go. Zo. Do. Ha.
He.
He.
P.
Pi. O.
And
Poo.
poo. All right. Only a few left. Okay, so this one, of course, is
Ma.
Mi.
moo. Flying moo. Oh, my knees don't want to bend anymore. That's moo.
Me.
Mo.
So out of order ones.
Mi.
Ba.
Ba. Mo. Me.
And
Moo.
almost there.
Su.
Soon.
Be.
Chi.
Gu.
Da.
Alright. Come on.
I believe in you.
I got both.
Ki. E.
Go. He. Ji. Ku. E. To. Pa. Ne. A. Nu. Ba. Ko. Ta. Za. Ha. Gu.
Ma.
Ma.
So.
So.
Zu.
Ka.
No.
Bu.
Te.
U.
Sa. Ho.
Gi. De.
De. Zo. Ho. Mo. Ke. Ge. Ni. Ji. Bu. Be.
Bi.
B. Yeah, B.
Se.
Ga.
Da.
Su. He.
Ho.
Se.
Se.
O.
Do.
Po. Or P.
P.
Me.
And
Mu.
okay, so let's finish them off, huh?
It's just, yeah.
Oh,
let's go.
yeah, let's just do the last few. We don't have time to do them all.
Punch me in the brain. Let's do it.
Let's just,
Da.
yeah.
Yu.
Mm-hmm.
Yo.
Da.
Da.
Li.
Ru.
Re.
Ro.
Wa.
O.
O.
Okay, and let's see. Last few, we'll do them once.
Ya.
Ya.
Ri.
Ru.
O.
Wa.
O.
Yep, this one's wa.
Wa.
Yo.
Yo.
Ri.
Ni.
Ro.
Ro.
Mm.
Mm.
Da.
Da.
De.
O.
O, there's particle O. And
Yu.
okay, and they're nice and scrambled for next time. Okay, questions? Okay, so next time we will practice some more, and we're also going to learn how to write everyone's names in katakana. So you can start thinking about it.
Are you,
Think about how you want your Japanese name pronounced, because if there's more than one way to spell it, you might want to choose one spelling versus
I have a
another.
question. So, like, I know people like who are Japanese or who are like Chinese, like in America, they use an English name so that they can go by. Do people like people there just like do that too? But
Not very common because they've got katakana to help deal with that.
Okay.
So, what sometimes happens is that people who have a kanji name in their own language, like they use for 4 days, because Korean will use their same kanji, but they'll put katakana above it, like with lines to show how they want it pronounced. And they'll usually use the Chinese reading of those same kanji, so that the name sounds a little bit Chinese-ish rather than Japanese pronunciation. So for example, the Japanese surname Nani means south, in Chinese it would be na. So they might put na above it to indicate I want to be called nan, not Minami, because I'm not Japanese, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, but most Japanese, most students who go to Japan don't necessarily take a Japanese name. Some people might just want to and take a nickname or something, but it
Yeah,
can be
I figured-
tricky because you don't realize